The American Renaissance takes place from 1840 to 1860. Now, you'll notice if you remember from American Romanticism that took place from 1800 to 1860 that this is the last 20 years of the Romantic period. Now, Transcendentalism and Anti-Transcendentalism make up the American Renaissance, and they are all still part of Romanticism, but they have their own special little movement as well. So we're going to talk about those. The Renaissance actually means rebirth. This was a time of extraordinary explosion of American literary genius. There were several masterpieces that were created during this time by such writers as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Allan Poe, and Herman Melville. You may have heard of some of those people. During this time, there was an intellectual movement. Now, it's called the Lyceum movement, which purpose was all about promoting intelligence. Now, a lyceum itself is a public building for concerts or lectures, or it can be an organization that's responsible for presenting concerts and lectures, etc. The purpose of this movement was to educate adults, train teachers, and establish museums and libraries. Lectures were a typical part of this movement, and Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, was one of its most popular speakers. Also during this time, there were some social reforms that people were very interested in seeing come about. Things like public education, the abolition of slavery, women's rights. All of those things are taking place during this American Renaissance time period. The Transcendentalists are going to be who we're going to talk about first. Transcendentalists, while there were several, a whole group, the main people that we associate with Transcendentalism are Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. Ralph Waldo Emerson is considered to be the father of Transcendentalism. He put forth a lot of these ideas originally. Thoreau is one of his greatest followers. He heard Emerson speak, he read Emerson's work, and was very impressed and very much felt like he wanted to live out transcendental philosophy as well. Both of them are often quoted on things like keychains and books. And magnifying glasses, I guess is what that thing is. You'll see their quotes everywhere. They are very quotable. Well, what is Transcendentalism? You can think of it as the idea of transcending our senses, which is, the physical world. We don't just rely on what we can see to know what reality is. This is the idea also of intuition, which we've talked about. You have to go beyond just what you can see to know what reality is. Now, this philosophy is both idealistic and optimistic, meaning that they look on the good side of everything, and that's what optimism means. And idealistic meaning that it can't really 100% be lived out, which you'll see as we read some of the things that we're going to read by them. Let's talk about the characteristics of Transcendentalism. You'll notice that these are very similar to Romanticism because Transcendentalism is a part of Romanticism. We'll be talking about individualism and self-reliance. Self-reliance meaning relying on yourself. We'll talk about the idea of non-conformity, not conforming to things. We'll get more into detail about that. We've got intuition, which we've talked about with Romanticism, that gut feeling. The divinity of nature very much respected. And then the idea of simplicity, living a very simple life. Let's first get into some details about individualism. They believe that humanity is good. In fact, Transcendentalists did not even believe in the existence of evil. There was only just the absence of good. They believe that each individual person is inherently good, capable of making their own decisions, worthy of the respect of every human being, even minorities. In fact, they believed that there was a lack of moral commitment in society to such things as women's rights, civil rights, freedom of slaves, and the horrible working conditions that were going on in all of the factories. They urged the individual freedom of expression. Be yourself. Be true to yourself. Be your own person, not what someone else wants you to be. And express that idea, even if it's not popular. Now, individualism was so important. Emerson and Thoreau adamantly believed that each individual had to intuit, that gut feeling, remember, his or her own truth. They didn't want people to be disciples of them because they want you to think your own way. Nonconformity is another idea that kind of goes along with the idea of individualism. They believe that people should think for themselves and follow their own beliefs and ideas, even if it goes against the majority. They believe that individuals should govern themselves. Thoreau will talk about how we don't even need government. We shouldn't need government because we should all be governing ourselves. They urged freedom from the rules of religion. They weren't really big into organized religion at all. And as far as literature, they broke away from European literary traditions and customs. Now we'll talk in a little bit more detail about intuition. They believe that truth and reality come from intuition, not reason or science, like the rationalists. Again, this is a romantic idea. It's that gut feeling. You come to know what truth is by that gut feeling. What your innermost being tells you is the truth. Divinity of nature. They glorified nature. That felt like nature was the manifestation of God. Remember with Romanticism we talked about how they could find truth, spiritual truths in nature. Emerson goes so far as to say you can discover God in the natural world. He's quoted in his essay Nature as saying, "Nature never became a toy to a wise spirit. The flowers, the animals, the mountains reflected all the wisdom of his best hour." Talking his being, of course, God, the divine. Emerson also believed in the idea of the oversoul, which is the idea that all life is contained in this one soul. Everything is connected. The divine, everything in nature, and even humankind. This kind of sounds a little bit like a Native American influence there. He also felt that since we were all part of this oversoul, and so was the divine, God, in other words, we didn't need priests or ministers to be agents for us. We didn't need them to pray for us. We could go directly to the source ourselves. We were all connected. Simplicity is the last one that we'll talk about. It's the idea of leading a simple life and living it to the fullest. Having only those things that you absolutely need. Against materialism. Why do we need a lot of materialistic things? This reminds us a lot of the Puritans, who felt that they didn't need all of that material thing because they're not going to be able to take it with them, right? Also, and this idea is most prominently put forth by Thoreau, is the idea that progress or technological advancements, what we consider to be conveniences, are not necessarily good. And we'll see that when we read parts of Walden. Those are the things that you're going to see as we read transcendental works, and those are the things you're going to want to take notice of.